If you have ever been underestimated, dismissed, or publicly humiliated by someone who thought they were untouchable, stay until the very end of this story. This one is for you. If you are still watching this right now, I need you to stay with me until the very end of this story, because what happens in the final few minutes is the kind of thing that will genuinely make you question how you see the people around you. The kind of thing that makes you realize that the person everyone is laughing at might just be the most dangerous person in the room. And before we dive in, if you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now and tap the like button, because stories like this one, stories about real people, real humiliation, and real jaw-dropping comebacks, are exactly what this channel is built for. We post every single week. You do not want to miss what is coming next. Now, let us talk about Marcus Webb. Marcus Webb was 34 years old, living in a modest two-bedroom house on Clover Street in a mid-sized town in Ohio. He worked 6 days a week at an auto repair shop called Hendrick's Garage, a small family-owned business where he had been employed for 11 years. He was not the owner, he was not the manager. He was the guy under the cars, the one with grease on his knuckles and a thermos of cold coffee sitting on the workbench beside him. He was the guy who showed up early and left late and never once complained about it. Because Marcus Webb had a reason to show up. He had a 7-year-old daughter named Lily. Lily had her mother's eyes, wide and brown and full of questions about everything. She collected rocks she found in the backyard and kept them in a shoebox under her bed, labeling each one with a strip of masking tape and a black marker. She called them her treasures. Marcus called her his. Lily's mother, Dana, had left when Lily was 2 years old, not because Marcus was a bad man. Not because of anything dramatic or violent. She had simply decided that the life she had imagined for herself did not include a small town, a modest house, and a man who smelled like motor oil when he came home. She left, moved to Atlanta, remarried within 3 years, and sent a birthday card every year that always arrived 2 days late. Marcus never said a bad word about her to Lily, not once. That was the kind of man he was. Now, the town they lived in had one dominant family when it came to the auto industry. The Calloway family. Sandra Calloway ran Calloway Motors, a dealership that had been in her family for 2 generations. It was the biggest dealership in the county, maybe 2 counties over. Sandra was 51 years old, sharp-tongued, well-dressed, and had a reputation for knowing exactly how powerful she was, and making sure everyone else knew it too. She drove a different car every week from her own lot, always something that turned heads. She sat on the town council, donated to the right causes, and laughed the loudest in any room she entered. Sandra and Marcus had a history, though calling it a history makes it sound more dignified than it was. Years ago, before Lily was born, Marcus had briefly worked at Calloway Motors as a lot attendant. He had been young, ambitious, and had actually approached Sandra with a business idea, a low-cost, certified pre-owned program targeting working-class buyers in the county who could not afford the dealership's standard pricing. Sandra had listened to his entire pitch, nodded politely, and then told him in front of 3 other employees that she did not take business advice from lot boys. He was let go the following week for reasons that were never clearly explained. Marcus never forgot it, but he also never let it harden him. He moved on, found his work at Hendrick's Garage, and built a quiet, decent life. The joke started in late October. Sandra Calloway had a problem that many people would consider a luxury problem, but a problem nonetheless. Over the course of several years, she had accumulated 12 non-running vehicles on the back corner of her dealership lot. Trade-ins that were not worth reconditioning, auction cars that had been overbid and turned out to be disasters, a couple of repo vehicles that were barely shells. They were taking up space, attracting complaints from neighboring businesses, and Sandra had been fined twice by the town for improper vehicle storage. She needed them gone. Her solution was what people in town would later refer to simply as the Calloway stunt. One Friday evening, Sandra hired a towing company, not the local one Marcus used, but one from 2 towns over, which told you something about the level of planning involved, and had all 12 broken vehicles towed and dropped, one by one, directly in front of Marcus Webb's house on Clover Street, in his driveway, on his lawn, partially blocking the sidewalk. 12 dead cars. Rusted frames, shattered windshields, deflated tires, missing hoods. One of them had a tree branch growing through the passenger window. The reason Sandra chose Marcus was not complicated. Word had gotten around, as word does in small towns, that Marcus had recently told someone at a local diner that he dreamed of opening his own shop one day, that he had been saving up, that he believed in himself. Sandra found this funny. She had apparently said to a friend, and this was later repeated many times over, that if Marcus Webb thought he was going to be a businessman, she would give him some inventory to get started. And then she laughed. By Saturday morning, Marcus walked outside to take Lily to her soccer practice and found his property transformed into a junkyard. There are things you imagine you would do in a moment like that. You imagine you would call the police, and he did. You imagine you would be furious, and he was, quietly, in the way that people who have practiced controlling their emotions are furious, still and deep and burning low. Lily stood beside him in her shin guards and cleats and looked at the cars, and then looked at her father and asked if they were going to keep them. Marcus looks down at her, and whatever he was feeling in that moment, he smiled at his daughter and said, "We will see, Bug." The police report was filed. The towing company, when contacted, confirmed they had been hired to deliver the vehicles and produced a work order. Sandra Calloway's name was not on it. It was under a shell company name, but in a small town, the truth moves faster than paperwork. Within 48 hours, everyone knew it was Sandra. Some people thought it was hilarious. Some people were quietly horrified. Most people did nothing because Sandra Calloway was Sandra Calloway, and Marcus Webb was just Marcus Webb. But Marcus Webb was already thinking. He had, over 11 years at Hendrick's garage, become one of the most skilled diagnostic mechanics in the region. He knew engines the way some people know music, intuitively, deeply, by feel. He had been saving money seriously for 3 years, living on a tight budget, packing his lunch every day, skipping the kind of small luxuries that most people do not even think of as luxuries. He had approximately $41,000 in a savings account. It was not enough to open a shop. It was not nothing either. He looked at those 12 cars, and instead of seeing humiliation, he made a decision that would change everything. He called in 3 favors from former colleagues and 2 friends from a car enthusiasts group he had been part of for years. He sourced parts strategically, using his industry contacts to get discounts that an ordinary buyer would never receive. He worked nights and weekends. He worked in the cold with a drop light and fingerless gloves. Lily would sometimes sit on an upturned bucket wrapped in a blanket and hand him tools, and he would explain what he was doing, and she would listen with total seriousness and eventually fall asleep, and he would carry her inside and come back out and keep working. It took him 4 months. By February, Marcus had fully reconditioned 9 of the 12 vehicles. 3 were too far gone, but he had stripped them for parts, which had offset a significant portion of his material costs. The 9 working cars were not luxury vehicles. They were not flashy, but they were solid, clean, mechanically sound, and priced in a range that working families in the area could actually afford. He set up a small website with the help of a teenager from his neighborhood who was studying web design. He posted on the town's Facebook group and on a few regional automotive forums. He called the operation Webb's Reliable Auto, a name Lily had suggested. He sold the first car within 72 hours to a nurse who worked night shifts and had been relying on a friend for rides for 3 months. He sold the second to a retired school teacher, the third to a young couple who had just had a baby. Each transaction was small. Each one mattered enormously to the person buying. Marcus charged fair prices, provided honest disclosures about each vehicle's history, and included a 30-day limited warranty on parts and labor backed by his own guarantee. He was not trying to compete with Callaway Motors. He was serving people Callaway Motors had never tried to serve. By spring, word of mouth had made Webb's Reliable Auto something the town was paying attention to. A local newspaper ran a small human interest piece. Then a regional outlet picked it up. The headline wrote itself. Single dad turns junkyard prank into thriving business. Marcus gave one interview, brief and measured. He never mentioned Sandra Calloway by name. He only said that sometimes people give you the materials you need without realizing it. Sandra Calloway read the article. People said she laughed at first. Said it was still nothing. Said $41,000 and 9 used cars was not a business. It was a hobby. She was not entirely wrong about the scale. But she had missed something fundamental about Marcus Webb, which was that he was not trying to build something fast. He was building something true. Over the next 14 months, Marcus formalized the business. He rented a small lot on the edge of town. He left Hendrick's garage, which was one of the hardest things he had ever done. Old man Hendricks cried when he told him, and Marcus nearly did too. He hired one part-time employee, a young man named Deshawn who reminded Marcus of himself at 22. He reinvested almost every dollar of profit back into inventory and operations. He obtained his dealer's license. He built a relationship with a credit union that offered financing to buyers with imperfect credit histories, which was exactly the population he was serving. And then, Sandra Calloway's situation began to change. Calloway Motors had for years operated on the assumption that its position in the market was unassailable. But the dealership had several structural problems that Sandra had been papering over with revenue for a long time. Her service department was chronically understaffed and had accumulated a deep well of customer dissatisfaction. A large franchise deal she had been counting on fell through when the manufacturer changed regional requirements she could not meet. 2 of her senior salespeople left within the same month for a larger dealership that had opened 60 miles away, and the financing partner she relied on tightened its lending criteria in a way that cut off a substantial portion of her customer base. The exact customer base Marcus was now serving with his credit union partnership. By the following autumn, Calloway Motors was bleeding. Sandra was not bankrupt. She was not desperate, not yet. But she was in the position that every person who has never truly faced adversity eventually faces. The position of needing something they cannot simply purchase or demand. She needed a buyer or a partner for the business, and she needed it sooner than she wanted to admit. Marcus heard about it the way everyone heard about everything. Through the fabric of the town, the quiet information that moves through diners and barber shops and church parking lots. He heard that Sandra had approached 2 larger dealers about acquisition and been offered prices she considered insults. He heard she was frustrated. He sat with that information for a long time. Then he called an attorney. Then he called his accountant. Then he called the credit union. Then he made Sandra Calloway an offer on her dealership. The meeting where this happened has been described by people who were not in the room in about 40 different ways. What is confirmed is that it lasted 2 hours, that Sandra initially said no, that Marcus did not raise his voice, did not make speeches, did not reference the 12 cars or Calloway Motors or anything that had come before. He simply laid out a fair offer, a clear vision, and a financing structure that worked. He came back a second time. He came back a third time. On the 4th meeting, Sandra Calloway signed. The day Marcus Webb took ownership of Calloway Motors, he stood in the middle of the showroom floor at 6 in the morning before anyone else arrived. Lily was with him, now almost 10 years old, wearing a jacket with the Webb's Reliable Auto logo on it that Marcus had made for her as a joke, and she had worn every day since. She looked around at the showroom, at the polished floors and the overhead lights and the row of cars, and she asked her father how he felt. He thought about it for a moment. He thought about the morning he had walked outside and found 12 broken cars on his lawn. He thought about Sandra's voice saying she did not take advice from lot boys. He thought about cold nights in the driveway with a drop light and Lily asleep on a bucket. He thought about every person who had bought a car from him and driven away in something reliable, something they could count on, something that gave them back a little dignity. He told Lily, "I feel like we are right on time." He renamed the dealership. He kept the staff who wanted to stay, retrained them, and built the service department into the most trusted in the county within 2 years. He expanded the certified pre-owned program, the exact program he had pitched to Sandra Calloway in that lot years ago, the one she had laughed at. He partnered with 3 nonprofits that help single parents and veterans access reliable transportation. He hired Deshawn as his operations manager. He bought Lily a new shoebox for her rocks and wrote on the lid in black marker, "Treasure Collector, Chief Operations Officer." Sandra Calloway moved to Florida. She was seen at a charity golf event the following spring and reportedly looked well. Marcus, when asked in an interview about her, said only that he wished her the best, and it seemed like he meant it. Here is what this story is actually about, and I want you to sit with this before you close the video. It is not about revenge. It is not about a man who got lucky or who outsmarted someone cruel. It is about what happens when a person refuses to let humiliation be the last word in their story. Marcus Webb did not win because he was smarter than Sandra Calloway, though he clearly was. He won because he was still. He was quiet. He looked at 12 broken cars on his lawn and found something worth building. Most people, faced with that kind of public mockery, would have spent their energy on anger, on proving something, on making noise. Marcus spent his energy on work. There is someone watching this right now who has been handed something that was meant to humiliate them. Maybe it is a job they lost, a relationship that ended badly, a public failure, a person who laughed at their dreams. And the person who handed them that thing thought they were giving a final judgment. They were actually giving materials. The people who try to bury you often do not realize they are giving you something to build with. If this story moved you, if it gave you something today, please take 1 second and hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach people who need to hear stories like this one. And if you are not subscribed yet, please do that now. We tell stories here about real people, real resilience, and real second chapters every single week. You belong in this community. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. We will see you in the next one.